Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a drink, it is time for some Path of Exile 2 discussion. Welcome to day 7 of Teaser season for patch 0.2.0, which is the Dawn of the Hunt expansion. This is going to be coming out on April 4th for those of you in the United States and similar time zones, and 6 AM on April 5th for me, over in the east coast of Australia. Today, Granny Games have continued their pattern of not giving away much of the contents of the Dawn of the Hunt expansion. They put out an announcement though that I think if you read between the lines does have something pretty important in it. This is the live stream Twitch drops promo that they're running. The basic idea is something that's very familiar to those of you that are Path of Exile 1 players. Tune in for a certain period of time during the live stream announcement, get free in-game MTX. That is something that they normally sell. However, there are two significant changes, and one of them I think we can read quite a bit into. During the live stream announcement, they're going to be showcasing a whole bunch of things related to Dawn of the Hunt. The two things that are substantially different. Firstly, this is going to probably be a bit better than most of these MTX promos because this is a brand new MTX. This is something they did do as well with Path of Exile 2 at launch. They had a promo where there were a number of MTX that were only available at the time through the Twitch promo, and they intend to sell them later, but they haven't actually started selling those ones yet. They're going to be following that model here. So in Path of Exile 1 land, what they tend to do for the equivalent promotion is they pick something from the back catalogue and they make that available as the promo prize. Here, they've made something entirely new. It's only going to be available in the short term through the Twitch promo, but then after that, it's then going to be available for sale at some point in the future. But the second thing, and I think the really big news here that's kind of hidden away, you'll get the Executioner's Guillotine unique finisher effect after 2 hours accumulated watch time on any channel with drops enabled that is streaming Path of Exile 2 during the event. Normally, that would be 45 minutes. This implies to me that they think that this is going to be a live stream people are going to be interested in staying on for 2 hours. And that's something that I think is quite new. A lot of these have generally been 45 minutes for the main presentation, give or take a little bit. Sometimes it goes 60, sometimes it goes 40, sometimes it goes 75, whatever. It's always something like 45 minutes. And then after that, there'll be a Q&A session. Here, I've got a feeling that the main reveal might actually go for considerably longer. Worst case scenario, it's just the Huntress that's coming. And in that case, I think there'll probably be something like 20 or 30 minutes of gameplay footage of the Huntress at various levels. But if they're going to be revealing more classes than the one they've already promised, then in that case, there might be considerably more. Another thing that's worth knowing is that it has been Path of Exile 1's recent practice. There's not been an absolute iron rule, but it's been their recent practice for the last couple of years that they'll reveal the patch notes towards the point where this is winding up. They'll sometimes exclude a couple of things from them, so it may not have various things like Atlas passive trees fully detailed in there, but it'll have the overwhelming majority of the patch notes. That's likely to come out then, and so that'll be something we'll be able to discuss on Twitch. You'll also notice that you'll be able to watch either the official Grinding Gear Games live stream, or alternately you can watch anyone's rebroadcast of it, as long as the rebroadcaster has drops enabled. So I'll be streaming my live reactions to this over on Twitch, and then afterwards I'll try to get those up on YouTube, or I'll get a more polished version. I have to work out exactly how I do that. It may even be that I do a YouTube stream going through all of the patch notes, assuming that we get all those patch notes. Lots of things to decide there, but the broad lay of the land is that I'll be over on Twitch at the time that the announcement happens because of this promo primarily. Otherwise, I'd prefer to be streaming on YouTube. And then after that, we'll come over to YouTube and then discuss things further here. So the biggest thing here really is this 2-hour thing indicates that Grinding Gear Games consider this to be one of the biggest announcements they've ever put out. And that's why they're making this into a bigger deal than usual. At least that's my reading of the events. The remaining topics of this video are going to be talking about delays. I want to talk about the full release of Path of Exile 2, patch 1.0.0, when it's coming. Grinding Gear Games stated back in last year that they wanted to have Path of Exile 2's full release, i.e. patch 1.0.0, be within 6 to 12 months of early access starting, and they were hoping for at the shorter end of that. I think that anything at the shorter end is completely dead in the water now, but in terms of at the longer end, could they still hit 1.0.0 this year? The answer is we don't currently know, but we're going to find out a lot when we get the patch notes for 0.2.0. The things you want to look for in there. Firstly, the number of Ascendancies in total that are in the game and the number of classes in total that are in the game. If there's a very small increase in these, so if we go from 6 classes, 12 Ascendancies, up to 7 classes and 16 Ascendancies, then in that case, we can say no chance of a 2025 1.0.0. On the other hand, if 0.2.0 has 9 classes and 24 Ascendancies, then that would still be on track to release the entire game this year, barring any major hiccups that happen in the later part of this year. Or alternately, maybe they'll split the difference, and this is what I expect. We'll end up with 8 classes and something like 20 Ascendancies, and then it starts to look unlikely but still possible for 2025. But I think the other thing that you really want to look for is Path of Exile 1 exclusive microtransactions. How many of these get ported across? The reason I say this is that these are important for grinding your games to have in Path of Exile 2. They want to sell these products to Path of Exile 2 only players. At the moment, they can't sell them to Path of Exile 2 only players. So they want to have them in the game, but they're also something that can get delayed if a major feature requires them to be bumped off. This will give you a bit of a sense as to just how far behind they are in terms of their own medium priority work. If it turns out that they get something like 40, 50, 60% of the entire backlog of Path of Exile 1 MTX into 0.2.0, or potentially even into 0.2.1, then this indicates that they're doing all right, and that they're likely to be ahead of where the community generally thinks they are. On the flip side, if they only have 12% of the Path of Exile 1 exclusive MTX, then that indicates they're quite a way behind, and they're constantly prioritizing, all right, we've got to get this in, so we therefore can't do this. We've bumped down all these medium priority things. They can get bumped off into the future. In that case, I think we're not looking at 1.0.0 until mid-2026. And of course, it could be somewhere in between, in which case we're looking at the first quarter of 2026 as a likely release date. It's also important to note that for grinding your games' commercial perspective, it's more important for them to port over the ones that they can still sell, so the ones from current supporter packs and also the ones that are just individual cash store purchases. Those are more important to them than the ones from historic supporter packs. Of course, they will need to bring those over to meet past promises, but that's something that may not happen quite as quickly as the ones that they can still definitely turn around and sell again. So from one topic about delays to another, one last Path of Exile 2 related news thing that is actually not about Path of Exile 2 directly. I considered making a separate video on this, but then decided to merge it into this one. This is the announcement that Last Epoch has made. Unfortunately, I think behind the scenes, Path of Exile 2 has had some substantial delays with patch 0.2.0. The reason I think this is that it was the 20th of February that they started doing teasers. Normally they do that 3 or most 4 weeks before they're intending to launch, and instead they stretch this out over a massive period of time. I think they were always planning to launch on the 21st of March, and then at some point before they would have announced that, before they had to make the final call, which would have been about the 28th of February or so, they realized, yeah, we're running behind. We're not going to make it. And unfortunately, that meant that with Path of Exile 2 pushing back to the 4th of April, that ended up clashing really badly with Last Epoch's Tombs of the Erased expansion. A number of people speculated that this was the medium player in the industry trying to smash one of the smaller players. That doesn't make any sense when you look at who owns shares in both companies. 11th Hour Games have a substantial investment from the primary shareholder of Grinding Gear Games. For that reason, I don't think there's any possibility it was deliberately done to crash a rival, but it was the case that it was going to really seriously mess up Last Epoch's release. Well, good news there for people who are both Path of Exile 2 and Last Epoch players, and at the same time bad news for people who are solely Last Epoch players. 11th Hour Games have delayed the launch of Tombs of the Erased. This is now going to launch on the 17th of April. This, I think, ends up working quite well all around. Part of the reason that Grinding Gear Games did not have the flexibility to delay later than the 4th of April is that New Zealand has 3 major public holidays over the couple of weeks after this date. So you have Good Friday from Easter, which pretty much everything in both Australia and New Zealand shuts for. Then you have Easter Monday, which is not quite as big a holiday as Good Friday, but it is still significant. And then after that, you have Anzac Day, which in both Australia and New Zealand is the primary Memorial or Veterans Day. And it's a very major public holiday again. Pretty much both entire countries shut down on the 25th of April. So what this means is that if they were to have launched Path of Exile 2 on the 11th of April, then in week 1, you're at 20% reduced staff hours because of Good Friday. In week 2, you're at 40% reduced because the Monday is going to be Easter Monday, and then the Friday is Anzac Day. So that's the reason that Grinding Gear Games didn't delay later. It looks though that Last Epoch may not have had that limitation, and so they had the flexibility to go on that date. Unfortunately, they had announced their date first, and so it did end up messing them up pretty badly. But I'm hoping that Last Epoch has a really good release here, because where the first time I played Diablo 4, I was very unimpressed with it. The first time I played Last Epoch, I thought, you know, this is a good game. It's just not quite finished yet. And ultimately, if there's more good ARPGs around, then if it turns out that one of them has a really, really bad expansion, or even a good expansion that you just don't like, then you can definitely jump over and play the other one and be happy with that. At the moment, if Grinding Gear Games can get the endgame working in Path of Exile 2, I think we're in a situation where we've got 3 good ARPGs to bounce between. Path of Exile 1 for when you want something really fast, Path of Exile 2 for when you want something that's a little bit more slow and methodical, and Last Epoch for when you want something that is right in the middle, but also that has a whole bunch of other interesting things going for it, because it's an entirely different design team, and therefore entirely different ideas. If you are interested in giving Last Epoch a shot and don't already have a copy of the game, I'll put a link down in the description below to an affiliate store that I've got where you can pick up Last Epoch, and it's usually the same price there as it is on Steam. The benefit there is that some of the money that would instead go to Valve comes to me instead. Anyway, that is what we've got in the way of news today. There is an MTX promo coming up, and it's going to be a 2-hour one, which means that Grinding Gear Games think that they've got a lot to say in the upcoming GGG live event. I'll be rebroadcasting that over on Twitch, and after that, coming over onto YouTube to talk further about it. I'm going to leave it there. May your Varlorbs have interesting results.